On this week's episode, we are joined by a very special guest from Florida. He's still one of our own. His most recent work is right in the final say with Mr. Carlton Leach, one of the most respected and notorious underworld figures in Britain. We discuss the book, which is about Carlton's life. Some things have never ever been written before to the public in his previous books, such as Muscle and Rise of the Fit Soldier. What's to come, the book signing dates, and so much more. So, with that being said, take it away, Mr. Jason Allday. How are you, sir?
Bit of too big of an introduction for myself. I'm just love my football and got good mates. Some simply went in one direction, some went in the other. But try to remain humble. But I think that's too big of an introduction for me. But I'll take it as a compliment.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a Hammers fan, mate. So congratulations on yesterday. I'll give you props for that. But in terms of the actual writing itself, you've obviously just helped. Well, more than helped. You've just finished Carl Leach's most recent book. Could you tell me a little bit about that and what people can expect from it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had some really favourable reviews, which is very humbling. I think more so just because I'm not a classically trained writer, I think is the term. I mean, I've written a few books myself, just more so as a labour of love. My first book, Junior, I did more so as a way to, I guess, vent frustration and anger and hatred, for no better a word. And it led to me continuing writing, and I maintain a friendship. I've got a really good mate. He's a very well-known author. I don't have the name drop because it's his friendship that means anything more than anything than his actual name. He's a very, very humble guy. So I've always had the right support, but it's his encouragement. There's actually a few authors that I'm pals with that are very good at what they do, far above my, I guess you could say, efforts. But it was when I was approached by Carlton. At first, I thought he was winding me up. As he's got a really dark, terrible sense of humour. So when he called me and said about me writing the book, again, I thought he was winding me up. I said, yeah, all right. Maybe I was going to be doing a revised of effort on his previous books, Muscle and Rise of the Foot Soldier. And he said, no, I want you to write my book or your autobiography because I want to close a lot of things out. I want to, excuse the pun, close the chapters of my life with a lot of what's gone on. I said, okay. So I checked with a friend, within seconds of him calling me. And I called my mate. I said, look, Carlton wants me to write his book. He said, yeah, absolutely, go for it. And I said, well, by no means is it as a lack of, I guess you could say, confidence on my part. It's just a lack of exposure. I've never really done anything on that level, and I've got to do it justice, as he's got a massive fan base and support his friends, right across the board. I don't want to do him a disservice. He said, there's no one better to write the book than you. And I said, but I'm not classically trained. He said, brilliant. That's one of the most important parts of why he's asking you, because it's going to come from an honest place. I said, okay. Is it the fact that you are of a very similar background, working class, you carry the same voice. You don't have to be, top drawer, villain or known right across the board because, if you write things down honestly, if you write them as you're told, the message will convey. And, people aren't silly. They can read something and they're going to be able to read between the lines and they're going to see a very high level of authenticism in what you're doing. I said, right, no worries. He said, but please, call me and let me know how it's going on. I said, no, of course I will. So I checked with another friend who's an author, and he said a very similar thing. He said, no, you've got a very honest voice and you're liked, again, by a lot of people on right across the spectrum. So if there's anyone should do it, it's definitely you. So again, I took that as a massive vote of confidence. So I called Carlton back, and he was somewhat surprised I checked with people. I said, well, no, it's because I want to make sure I do things properly. You tell me something, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to translate in a way that it can be read. That's, how it is. I when I write, again, by no means would I ever consider myself an author. Never have, never will. To me, being an author is I'd say a profession that is something that you ideal to be. You know, it's a dream for a lot of people. I mean, when I was at grammar school, an author was someone like, you know, Shakespeare or Blake or, you know, and these other great writers, very iconic people. They're writers in modern times, Irving Welsh, Martin Knight. I mean, Joe England is one of my mates. He's a really good writer, very humble guy. But these guys I would consider authors, not me. You know, someone that loves writing. It doesn't qualify you as an author. So I said to Carlton, okay, well, let's do it. I said, but I'll tell you what, let's make sure that I'm going in the right direction. I said, I'll write a few chapters and then you see if it fits what you like. Because I think the most important thing with writing is that, well, with me, from my perspective, how I've always been encouraged by, again, two friends that are very well-known authors, is that, you know, give me a reason to read it and give me a reason to turn the page, which I think is a great MO. So I said, I'll send you some writing and we'll go from there. And I said, I'll write the first 3 chapters and let me know if you like it, and then we'll build from that. So I sent him the first chapter and he called me back like that week and said, no, you don't need to, I've read that and that's perfect. You've got my voice, let's do this. So then it's just a matter of flying back to the UK, because obviously now it's a little bit easier, but, you know, up until recently I was living, you know, between the west coast of the US and the east coast of the US, either California or Florida. So it was a matter of flying home, down with Carlton and going over everything.
That's something I wanted to touch on is, you know, although you've got the East London accent, you're actually on another continent, you know, so I guess, you know, it couldn't have been easy to, you know, to get the project finished. I mean, how did you go about time management and, you know, actually in terms of completing the project as a whole, writing this book as opposed to anything else that you've written?
Well, I think one of the hardest things, of course, being a married man with a family, children, responsibilities and commitments on another continent is first of all, you had to convince the wife that you was going back and it weren't just for a jolly up. You weren't going, you know, on a rampage around London or any of the other major cities with your pals, and it weren't going to be just football and, you know, the old cliche pie and mash and the pub and your mates. I had to convince her first that this was, you know, a business trip. And then the next one was actually buying pairs of jeans, which sounds kind of silly, but I wear shorts every day. If I'm not in my swimming pool, if I'm not wearing a pair of shorts, I'm in 90 degrees, 100 degrees of heat. So then that was the next challenge, was going and fitting in some pairs of jeans. So I had to go and buy pairs of jeans and then booking a ticket. Those things are easy. You go online, you book the ticket, you're home. And each and every time I was coming back, Carlton would cover those fares, which I was very much against, because again, I'm very much a person that believes in being self-sufficient. But again, Carlton, like he says, you know, I'll do anything for family, which again, I took as a massive compliment. So I'd say the hardest thing was more so convincing your family, no, my missus. The next part was dealing with the temperature change. But flying to and from is something I do regularly. I'm normally home 4 or 5 times a year anyway. And there's nothing more welcoming or a justified reason to come home than, you know, you're going to watch your beloved team or be with your mates. And I'm lucky I've got two lots of mates. I've got, you know, my mates I grew up with on my housing estate, for those that are still around. I've got the best friends in the world, and then you've got your football mates. And again, I couldn't wish for better friends. They're solid pals. If we argue or have a fallout, it's because why is he one of your mates? He's a Tottenham supporter, or I'm not going to that pie in my shop. It's crap. Those are typically the only arguments and disputes we have. Other than that, no, I'm very fortunate. But I think that's a representation, or encapsulates, why I'm a football crowd. Again, my mates that I grew up with are solid pals, because it's seen across the UK, those that come from exactly the same background as me, or I come from the same background as them, you know, working class. I grew up on a housing estate in London. They're the people that you've really suffered with as much as you've celebrated with. They know your flaws as much as they do your accomplishments and the good things about you. So they're the people that remain, you know, humble in your life, or they keep you humbled, I should say, because they know the true you. So yeah, so in terms of, you know, the adjustments and doing the book, you know, the angle was, it was nice because I had that breathing space. I mean, if I wasn't talking to Carlton, I was talking to his manager or his PR guy. Who Carlton is very lucky he's got this guy, and I know Carlton understands that. But his PR, his manager guy is phenomenal at what he does. The name that he goes by is Jay. He's a very, very. I mean, I'm often said to be complimented. I'm being very humble. This guy far exceeds that. He's very much in the shadows. He's a very private person, but he takes care of Carlton endlessly. You'll never see a photo of his manager or PR guy. He does exist because it was said, "Oh, you're his manager." I said, "I'm not. I'm not qualified to do." I have trouble getting out of the pool, and they let them commit into running of someone's life and their business. But his manager and Carlton I was on the phone with every day. But the nice thing is, because I'm another continent away, because I'm an 8.5 or a 9-hour flight away in 5 hours difference, or when I was in California, I was 8 hours difference. You've got that breathing space. So it's not like that anyone can just pop around your house and say, I'm not, intruding on what you're trying to accomplish or do. I could have that day or 2 days of breathing space, and I could turn my phone off. I mean, even now, I'm probably one of the only people in the world. I don't even know where my cell phone is. I don't carry a cell phone with me. I'm not a big fan of them. Like with social media, I like it because I can stay in contact with people. And I've got family that are Tottenham. I've got family that are Millwall, and obviously I'm hard-lined with West Ham. Love my football. So when I'm getting all the silly messages about wins or losses, up until a little while ago, it was all losses, but now we're on this fantastic streak. So, but at any time of the day that you don't want, that you want to disconnect, I just simply go off. And I'm quite happy being off the phone. So again, being a continent away, that I think is the main difference, that I had breathing space. I didn't have to apologise to anyone that, I didn't want to speak with anyone. It was, Jay's thousands of miles away, and he doesn't have to be bothered by people. But it was a very unique approach, being that there was that time difference. But I used that to my advantage as much as Carlton used it to his advantage, as much as his manager, Jay, would take, use it to his advantage. So there were major differences, being that I know when he had his book Muscle done with, I believe it was John Blake. He sat with the writer, and he was with him for a solid week. With me, it'd be with me for 2 or 3 hours on the phone. I might not speak to him for a few days. So it was nice that you could have that break, because you could basically realign or reflect on what you were writing and where you wanted to go. Because the message, I think, can be very easily lost when you commit to a whole week or 2 weeks. I know one writer.
That communication that you had for those hours on those days. It was essentially like you were side by side, even though you were.
And there are advantages to that. There's no question. And like I say, look, I had a pal that did a book with somebody. I won't say his name, because I think the book's out now, but it's a phenomenal book. He's very, very good at what he does. But he spent an entire month with someone. He took weekends off to go back with his family, and he's with this guy Monday to Friday. And I mean, that's commitment right there. Again, this is why I don't consider myself an author. I think there's a lot of self-grandizing and self-promotion for so many authors out there. But it's, again, I rely on the input of 2 of my friends that are phenomenal writers. I mean, those guys, I would say, are true authors. Urban Welsh being one, and Martin Knight the other. But then there's another writer I'm really good mates with, a guy called Joe England. And he's fantastic. Why this guy hasn't smashed it yet, I don't know. I don't get it. But, it's the input I rely on from others to allow me to remain humbled and seek a direction. Because, again, it's one thing me or anyone writing something, but to get, feedback, both positive and negative, that, a writer needs. I mean, there are some writers out there that won't take any criticism. They're so far up their own arses. I think it's a form of comedy.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be able to take criticism. I think it's a case of who is handed the criticism out. I mean, if it's somebody that's respectable in whichever art form or whichever sector it is, then yeah, by all means. But sometimes you just get people that just either are interested or it's hate. So I think a lot of people misinterpret criticism.
And that's the thing
for that. But
yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the one thing that I'm somewhat mindful of, is that an opinion is one thing, and that's valued and accepted by me, again, because I'm not an author. But when it comes down to facts, as long as you've got the facts, everything else is someone's opinion. If they say, "Oh, that's shit," or "It's no good," say, "Okay, by what standard? Your standard, or an industry standard, or is that your opinion?" Well, see, the thing is, I feel, okay, then that's an opinion. You're entitled to your opinion, but it doesn't have to be right and it doesn't have to be accepted. But once someone says something factual based on an event or a spelling or a phrase or something, that I'll take to heart, and absolutely, because I'm humbled through humility. Like I say, if I write anything, there's one or two people I will send it to, and I say, "What do you think?" And I say, "Oh, I absolutely loved it." I mean, one of the biggest compliments I've gained is from, again, Irving, who's a really, really good mate. And the guy will never do enough to help me. He's just phenomenal. But whenever I think the biggest compliment he's ever given me, and this is when I wrote my late brother's book many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was now. When I said to her, "What do you think?" He said, again, he would always, play me up and, put me on a pedestal, which again is a massive compliment. But I remember, really putting him in a corner once, metaphorically, and saying, "Look, why do you always help me?" Why do you? Said, "Because you give me a reason to turn the page." And that phrase has remained with me to this day, and it's one of the biggest compliments I've ever received. It's very, very humbling. I mean, the guy is phenomenally trained. I mean, he's gone from writing books to now he's very successful as a script writer. Phenomenal. And for that crossover, I know I've got a friend I used to work with at the BBC from many, many years ago, and he said script writing, it's a talent, it's an art. So it's like you're going from colouring books to basically inventing your own canvas with script writing. So I enjoy reading scripts because that allows you to envision even further. I mean, reading is one thing, but I think reading or writing a script is something that's a true art form. I mean, I enjoy reading scripts to films that have been established, and it helps you see it in a different light in many respects. I read the script to Scarface not too long ago, the original one with Al Pacino, and it's just it allowed me to view the film in a completely different context. It's absolutely phenomenal. And then you start kicking yourself in the backside because you think, right, again, I was born in London. I was raised on a council estate. I was very fortunate to have been sent to a grammar school, which I don't think they exist anymore, grammar schools. But I wish I'd paid a lot more attention, like, the old cliche saying, "Guys, you think you're dead just for a laugh and, treat it seriously." But I think that was one of the saving graces I had at grammar school was my English prose literature teacher, Mrs. Dudley. I'm sure she's hopefully still around. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But she I think gave me a true appreciation of the written word. Of all the subjects I did at school, that was one I definitely enjoyed and paid attention to. It's just, when you read and you read in the right context without prejudice, I think there's a certain amount that you can retain and accept and learn from when you do that as well.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like you say, it's all about having an open mind when it comes to things like this. I mean, go back to the football, not the scores, but growing up, obviously it was being a working class boy, surrounded by people who had the same passion as you. How are those days, of going to the football games and going to watch West Ham, and how did you get into that aspect of things? In terms
In
of
what context? Being that I was born in West London and I followed an East London team, or the difference between football then and football now? In what context?
well, I guess the more so the tabloids take on football sports back then, and just the atmosphere and just all aspects of it.
Well, I mean, newspapers, I mean, as much as they're discredited, as much as newspapers, I mean, the best example is with the Sun newspaper in Liverpool. And I've got a lot of Scouse mates, really good people. My pals in Liverpool are one of the best representations of Liverpool as a whole, even Leach supporters, but Liverpool supporters, whatever it may be. But the newspapers do themselves more damage than good, but we still buy them. And I can't, and I would never apologise for the Sun's newspapers, how they maliciously wrote about a certain event in Liverpool, that event all those years ago. Again, I support my pals in Liverpool 110%. They're good people, proper people. But the newspapers, they've got to report on a doom and gloom. I mean, it's either sensationalised or it's written in a way that's going to make you buy the newspaper. And I think with me accepting and knowing how newspapers have to work, I'm trying to remember, there was a term I heard, I'm sure it was when I was I volunteered at the BBC from 87, 88, right through to 92, 93. And I worked with a guy called Dave Pearce. I was, production assistant or show assistant, whatever you want to call it. I met some really, really good people, but I remember there was a number of people that worked within mainstream press that you'd often speak with. When I was at, it was actually Radio London, and then it changed over to GLR. I met some really nice people there. I know there's that whole thing with the BBC and their wrongdoings, and that is true without question. But I met a couple of nice people that were equally as horrified later on. I know because I spoke with them recently about how they carried on, but just that's just how they were. No means do I justify that. But point being about mainstream press, if it was a bland or boring story, no one's going to buy the newspaper. So they exploit the stories. And I think the term I heard back then, if it what was it? If it burns, it earns. If it bleeds, it leads. And I think that's a fair representation of how most mainstream newspapers carry on and act. It's proven. Excuse my phone. Everyone's still going mad about the football last night. I'm getting loads of messages from my Scouts pals.
That's fine. Like
but no, I think by and large, if people know that newspapers they lie or they embellish or they just sensationalize it, and looking back at football back then, I think the only sort of like representation or standing the newspapers had was to talk about current events. So, I mean, I came in on the tail end of it. I mean, I'm in my 50s now. West Ham, whether it Millwall, any of the London clubs, Chelsea, Arsenal, they're having a good old tear up. But football, I mean, that was the 70s and the early 80s. I think by 85, 86, it was pretty much a done deal. Late 80s at most. 90s, forget it. CCTV, it took that element away of what was some heavy duty, hooligan activity. Because a lot of the lads were one step ahead back then. They put on the football specials and everyone was jumping on the posh trains at the first class, the Intercity, hence the ICF, as everyone knows. Well, again, by their own means. So it was hard to keep up with them. Now with tracking and tracing and cell phones, forget it, it's a done deal. I mean, the lower leagues are still carrying on, I think, in a fair fashion. All the away games when you go, like we was out in Gents with West Ham being overseas just recently in mainland Europe. So it's hard to keep up with over there. And the press, they haven't got a footing over there because, again, they don't have the local authorities to feed them the narrative, if you will. They're just going on gossip and rumours. So, but yeah, the main difference I would say with football hooliganism back then and how the newspapers sensationalised it and lied. I mean, there was that one famous article where you had that one guy standing with a scarf around him, like the guys did in the 70s. They had to wrap a scarf around their wrist, around their waist, around their neck to signify to be identified what team they supported. And then, of course, stepping over to the casual element in the early 80s. It changed tremendously, because of CCTV and everything else. And I think that helped fuel the newspapers to even sensationalise it even more. But newspapers are never really there to do anyone any good unless it's for a commendable reason, like a charity or helping a kid or a family, But newspapers, I treat them largely with the contempt they deserve. I've spoken to a few of them, and they have to sell a story. By no means am I, again, justifying their actions, but again, if it's a boring story, it doesn't really fit narrative, they're not going to really have much to do with it unless, again, they can really, really make it worth their while and put it on the front. And if they have to do a retraction or apologise for something, it'll be in the following day, but it'll be a very small line, probably on the back page of the paper or underneath an advert for a new set of cooking pots or something that no one's really going to take notice of. But no, I treat newspapers with the contempt they deserve. If they do something nice, I'll be the first to applaud them, but it's not that often. But yeah, big difference. Back in the day, it was to sensationalise it, it was to lie, and it was largely people were reporting on an issue or an event they had no connection with, that they couldn't identify with. There's very few what I'd call working class writers that really are, a true representation or can do justice. I mean, going back to literature, if you think one of the first books, I tell you what, one of the first books I enjoyed reading was Jay Allen. It's a Scottish lad. He did a book called, I think it's called Diary of a Footballer Hooligan or Bloody Casual or something. And that was a good book. Mickey Smith did, of course, the governor's book down for West Ham. And everyone said, but it's not written in this way. It's not written, but it wasn't meant to be. These boys, these lads aren't, again, accredited writers, are not classically trained in that respect. But I enjoy reading those books. Again, Joe England.
It's written from an honest point of view, I guess.
It's not meant to be. I mean, that's why I think by and large, well, with me personally, I'll speak for a few people, but I enjoy watching a documentary on a subject more though than when I watch a film. But then a film's there to be viewed in a different light. A film is meant to be seen as a form of entertainment. Some people take it as gospel. I would say the main difference between Rise of the Foot Soldier, Carlton's film, and say Green Street Hooligans, well, one's there as a form of entertainment, a very generic approach and look on it, and Carlton's obviously is much truer to the fact. But again, it's with newspapers. Well, do you want to buy a book or do you want to buy a newspaper? One's going to be more factual if it's based on fact, and newspapers are just get a different message. I treat newspapers as a form of entertainment more than anything. The Sun newspaper. I use myself as a restaurant. I used to get the Sun newspaper for page 3, the football, and again, what was on the telly. Anything else was it just went in the bin. I didn't really pay much attention to it.
Yeah, essentially. And going back to what you just said there about
that's one of the biggest disputes. But when you're talking about those who got nothing good to say, they don't bother me. They're not a threat to me because they're not of that ilk that I was educated and raised by. And I think that's why, largely, I'm accepted by a lot of heavy-duty villains, not because I've got a track record in terms of villainy or being a hooligan, because I don't, but it's because I follow the rules. I've sat in a room with with a certain individual when they were discussing the actual fact that this person that they didn't like, whether he was going to take another breath the following day, and I wanted to excuse myself because again, I'm not a villain. I've got a criminal record. Actually, I've got several criminal, but it doesn't make me a villain. Being born in a stable doesn't make you a horse. Doesn't qualify you in that category. So by and large, follow the rules. It's like with Urban Welsh. I said to him, why is it you always help me? He said, because you're doing it for the right reasons. It comes from the heart. So is Martin, phenomenal actor. And you always pass that on. Again, I think there's a lot of people that are behind me, a lot of serious heavy-duty people behind me. But again, it's not because I was a villain, or I've done this, or I've done that. You claim things you haven't done, you'll be washed out quickly, and you won't be of that crowd or of that circle. And I always say, whatever door, speaking in a metaphorical sense, if you knock on a door and you walk through it, and then 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later, you knock on that same door and you're welcome back, that tells you who you are and what you stand for. Like I say, I've got Glaswegian mates, salt of the earth, proper people. Like my old man once said me, one of the only bit of advice my old dad ever said to me, you befriend a true Scotsman, you've got a friend for life. I stand by that. Paul Ferris, Sandy Chug, Jack up in one of the Rangers lads. I won't start rattling about names. It doesn't matter. But those lads welcome me back year in, year out because they're good lads. They're solid pals. I've got a few Celtic pals. They never understood why I aligned with the Rangers, but that's football. To me, it's not political. It's simply football. But I've got lads around the country, I think, that back me and support me for the same reason. Like I say, in answer to your question, why Carlton is so heavily respected and liked, because he follows those rules. He's got pals. I mean, his little black book is impressive. I think he knows more people than the Yellow Pages. It's impressive, and he's liked for those reasons. He's proper. Anyone that says anything bad about Carlton is either jealousy or they don't know him. Opinions again is a different matter. There's lads across different firms that don't like Carlton, but that's down to football. It's not down to politics. Again, I'm using politics as a simple reference, but he's liked for a lot of reasons by heavy-duty villains. Again, for that reason, South London, East London, North London, West London. It's kind of unique. I mean, the people that you'd normally see that would be liked, favoured, welcoming to certain circles in different parts of the country, your Wilf Pines, your Joey Piles seniors. I mean, good people, good heartfelt people as well from your own. I think it's because they did things for the right reasons. In terms of the law, the establishment, no, absolutely they were, but they were welcome for the right reasons. And with me personally, when I'm asked, how's it this person or that person, but with me there's no conflict. I can be with East London villains, South London, whether it be active or retired, long gone. It's because there's no conflict, and I don't bullshit. I'm not a villain. I'm not a top-rated villain. I never was. There's people there was people that say that I've attested to that. Well, show me that in writing. Where I've claimed I was this, because I think this I'm a decent person, and the people who have been around me, or I've been around, will attest to that. Yeah, Jay, that's where that term come from. One of your own. When the late Danny Woolard, a man who was just very, very humble in his ways. I mean, heavy duty East London villain. When I did my first book 12, 15 years ago, whatever it was, kind of over 10 years ago, let's just say. When he was calling around and vouching for me, it was vouching for people he'd known 30 or 40 years. They only knew of my name because of someone had mentioned, oh, Jason's doing a book, or Jason popped down and see you for a pint, or I'm going to bring my mate Jason. Yeah, I was welcome because of, I was traveling with someone. But when you start getting vouched for, And again, because of like late Danny Woolard, the man was an absolute diamond, a legend. He'd call, let's say that, he got in contact with Frankie Fraser and say, I'm going to send Jace down to see you. Who's Jason? Oh, he's one of your own. I took that as a massive compliment, but I think that's why I was welcomed in those circles. Not because I was a villain, again, because I never was. It's because, you follow the rules, you follow the code, you identify with the old school ways. And there's people that say that old school isn't there anymore. Well, it is. It's just not flaunted, or it's just not around in mainstream because there's so many wrong uns. It's that simple. But that helps highlight who the wrong uns are, because they don't understand the code and they don't want to do it because they've got their own self-serving agenda. But again, we'll keep it positive and go down that positive route.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of going down that positive route, how did you and Carlton become close then? To the point, where you're at now.
That's down to, I would say, I mean, there's a guy I've known for many years, and he's like a big brother to me, as he is a lot of people. There's a guy called Stevie Guy at West Ham. He's like the big brother that will tell you if you do wrong, but he'll back you on anything if it's for the right reasons. And when my brother was murdered some years back, Steve was there straight away, like Danny Woolard was there straight away, to give me support, because I was probably bent out of shape. So I was flying home, and I was meeting up with people, and again, because I was off the rails and I was proper frustrated and angry, and hatred was running through me because of the loss of my brother. But Stevie Guy stepped in and Danny Woolard stepped in and said, look, what we're telling you now is going to make sense. If you go down that route, we'll support you unquestionably in anything that you do. But now, if you go down that route of hatred and looking for dealing with people, namely the establishment, your mum's going to be burying another son. So that's sort of like, that woke me up. It humbled me, being that, I'm not of that capability of putting people in the ground. But they said, let's make a few suggestions. And the concept came about writing a book, and then, them vouching for me, people. But I'd say the introduction to Carlton was through Stevie Guy. And Stevie vouched for me for a lot of people. And Stevie's like a big brother. I mean, again, when you're wrong, he'll say, listen, and he'll pull you up on it. I mean, one of the rules he had, and I love him for this, is that he said, I'll help you do what you've got to do and accomplish it. But the rule is, anyone I introduce you to, what you write, it can't be dog shit. It's got to meet a certain level. You've got to represent people for the right reasons in the right context. And that's a good measure. That's a good reference. And then with Danny, it was very much the same. He said, let me read what you've done. If it's all right, then go ahead. Never changed one word, because I've done it all, again, in the right context, the right reasons, which I took as a compliment. I mean, Stevie Guy's still about. Love him to death. He's getting grumpier as he gets older, but love the man to death. He's like a big brother. Danny's long gone, unfortunately, but his legend lives on with other people. I mean, there's one of my pals, he lives deep Essex, a guy called Richie Reynolds. Proper young lad. He's old school to the bone. Very much like an old head on young shoulders. There's a smart fella. Richie's a good mate. But that message is there, and like I say, the introduction to Carlton was through Stevie Guy, and then meeting up with other people. And to be around these people is obviously a compliment and a privilege. But to maintain that friendship, you've got to earn your stripes, so to speak. Not through villainy or hooliganism, because those things that's not of my real making. Just being a decent person, I think, I really am, or I'm told I am. My missus says otherwise sometimes, but what can you do, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it speaks volumes about, your character, to have so many people drawn to you in that sense, and also to be trusted with somebody's life work as well, and I mean, would you say that the actual the writing of the book brought you even closer to Carlton than you already were before?
Oh yeah, unquestionably. I mean, when Carlton called me and said about doing a book, I mean, I was meant to have been flying home. I think it was a month or 6 weeks after that phone call, and he said, you want to come back? I said, absolutely. I was there the following week, and there was an agreement that we had to have where there could be no shortcuts. I mean, originally, and it's a shame, but it's just the way it is. The book was about 22 chapters, I think. But then it was like a novel. It was like the Yellow Pages. I don't think they do the Yellow Pages anymore. Anyway, but it was like, it was high enough off the floor that you could have bloody eaten your dinner if it was like a small table. So we had to skate back, and that was one of the toughest decisions. Well, which chapters do we take out? So the chapters that are there are what meant a lot to Carlton, and the rules that we had, and I agreed with everything he said, and and likewise, it was the chapters that were written and they're written in a way that Carlton, it was heartfelt, and that was one of the hardest things for him to do, was to write about him personally, because by and large, when you're such a, I guess the term is public figure, when you're known mainstream, the last thing you want people to know about you is personal, your most intimate details, because when you've operated on a criminal level or an organised crime or villainy, football hooliganism, call it what you will, when you open up, so to speak, and when you tell intimate details, you become very open to attack, vulnerable, I guess is the term. So I said to Carlton, if you want your book to be more than just Essex, you want your book to be more than just West Ham, which it's going to have to be, that's where you're going to have to go. And I think there were some chapters that really were close to him, but he saw logic and sense in it. And he actually overcommitted to certain chapters because he saw there was a level of realization when he saw how important they were to be, his final word. And, his dad was a chapter that was very, very difficult for him to do. I mean, his dad and the people he's been around, I've been there when he's been speaking to certain people, and these are some heavy duty people that would never allow their name to be in a book. And it's somewhat, I'd say, humbling is at minimum to be in the same room with these people. And they shake your hand, and then you sort of like excuse yourself. No, you sit in there and you hear the discussions. You're like, this is the real deal. Those names, those conversations can never be in print. But for Carlton to be that open about his life, and then people read it again, I think is very, very humbling for Carlton as well, because again, he's showing how vulnerable a human being can be. And again, writing his dad's chapter, as much as he's been around some serious people, his dad remains the top of his tree. Very, very, very much the making of who Carlton is. There's a testament to Carlton's character.
He shows well.
Would be his dad. So again, it shows that level of vulnerability that he was willing to take and commit to. And there were times where, because Carlton's got more energy than me. I mean, as he said, Jace, fucking hell, you could talk a glass eye to sleep. But the level of energy that Carlton's got, I kid you not, it outranks, outweighs, outpaces any 20-year-old that's done too much gear or he's on a mission. Carlton's just a million miles an hour. I don't think he sleeps. We'd be having some pie and mash, getting some of the best conversation, backstory for writing a piece. No matter as I put my foot down, he's paying and we're out the door. We're jumping in his car and we're 70 miles an hour, on one of the motorways. He's having 3 conversations, 2 different phones. Then he's one of his daughters on the phone. He's sorting that out. Then he's got a phone call coming in looking for advice or as acting in a consultancy, capacity. Then talking to me. Then we're pulling out. Goes, you're hungry? I'm like, I'm putting more weight on being back in London, back home, than I am when I'm in the States. And there's a lot of really good food and bad food on either side of the pond, I promise you. But I put on more weight when I'm home. And it's no more than when I'm cold, because I'm going to take you to meet someone so you get an understanding of this scenario. And then where we meet, or we're going to meet in a pub. 12 pints later, I'm like John Wayne going sideways without my horse. I'm falling out the pub, trying to remember everything that was said. I'm scribbling things down. I'm doing a voice on my iPhone, trying to remember the conversation. Back in his jam jar, we're banging down the road. He's on another phone call. Where we go? I've got to grab something to eat. Getting a kebab. Some of the best foods in the world are in London. So, and again, it's those conversations that give me a testament or a merit to Carlton really is. I mean, he's complex beyond understanding. The level that he can operate on, a market stall, trader. We spoke to some old Indian bloke, lovely old boy that's been in the UK since the 50s. He's having a conversation, completely relating and identifying with that conversation to when we're speaking to one of the most feared people in a certain part of the UK, operating on that level, and then talk to one of his daughters about, a domestic thing that he's trying to help with and invest in, and then he's the mastermind of conversations. He really is. I mean, I've often been complimented how I can relate and identify with a conversation, even on a subject matter that it's alien to me. Carlton's the master of it. He really is just a complex person. I say that the 22 I'm sure it was 22 chapters. Those will never be seen, and that to me is the loss. But the plus being that for him to commit to that book and those chapters, and like you said or asked, what was it like getting to know Carlton? It's unfathomable the level that he operates on, and I think that is why he's so respected and so liked and so welcomed in different parts of the country, because he's honest about who he is and what he can do. I mean, he can't. the ability of someone to talk on a subject is fine. But you can talk on 20 different subjects at any one stage of the day and come out unscathed and untouched and ahead. That's a level of skill right there.
And you know, on top of what you just said, he also seems like a man that just sees everybody as one. You know, he seems like a man that just with no judgment and genuine interest as well into what people have to say.
Yeah, I mean, Carlton is a person you can talk with, the person making the soup or the bread sandwich or the kebab with as much respect and dignity and you know, I'd say compassion and mannerism as he can with, you know, with one of his daughters or someone taking the tickets at the turnstile or someone that he's just met in the street wanted to thank him for, you know, for helping out with something. And he can operate on any level. And I think that's, again, a testament to who Carlton really is. He's very humble in many respects. Like I say, of the several phones that he might be on at any one time, it's all the same level of mannerism. I never saw him growl at anyone. I never saw him lose his temper with anyone. When he spoke with people, it was in a way that he could readdress or reapproach that conversation minutes, hours, or days later. And there was times that it was just really, really impressive to see him operate. And I think one of the hardest things for him to do was sit still. We'd be sitting down, all right, I said, right, we're not going anywhere for a fucking hour. I've got to get this done. I've got to get this written down. I've got to get these facts. So now I've got to call this person. And he'd sit there and he'd be going, all right, and I said, no, please. And there was one occasion I had to lock the door. You're being childish, Jace. Come on, we've got to go. No. But that's Carlton. He micromanages, I guess you could say, if you look at things in a commercial or an industrial way. He micromanages. It's not that he has to be in control, it's because he cares. He cares about this person like he cares about that person. But he doesn't see people in that respect, like, I guess you could say, I use the term mainstream. Everyone's here. If they need help for the right reasons, he's there. And he'll make time for that person. There's not a time where I've not called that he's not been willing to answer a question, or he's been there, or like, you know, I'm flying home in December. I was fucking cursing him. He booked all the flights, all paid for. You know, you can't thank these people enough. He goes, I don't want it back, just a Christmas present. This is for you. Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas. And then I was cursing. So I looked at the temperatures. I mean, today I'm looking out my window at the pool and I'm looking at the palm tree and the sunshine, blue skies, and it's, you know, 80 degrees, no humidity, best time of the year. Then I'm looking at, I know every time I do that, someone curses me. And then I'm looking at the temperatures, the forecast for December. I had to go out and buy a couple of pairs of jeans. I didn't own jeans. Even when I was back in the UK, I think I owned one pair of jeans at my brother's house. I was wearing shorts, you know, jogging bottoms. I don't own jeans. You don't own a pair of jeans in Florida. So yeah, that was that was a time of cursing Carlton. Coming back in December, like I say, for this book tour, and we're going to be in Cardiff, Liverpool, Mexborough, Bristol. There's some proper cold temperatures coming up. So I'm cursing him, and we're wearing 2 pairs of socks and double jackets, I think.
I think I'll be at the. I think I'll definitely be at the Liverpool one date. I didn't. I wasn't quite sure what the other dates were. I mean, if you could list them off, please do, so I can add them into the.
Just go to his website. Like I say, his manager does all his stuff, and his manager's phenomenal at what he does. He's really, really good at what he does. And there's a man who has Carlton's interests before his own. But go to Carlton's website, carltonleach.com. But December 2nd is when it actually starts. That's up in Cardiff. I think they've added seats now because it's sold out within a week, and I think they've added seats. But yeah, go to carltonleach.com. You'll see all the tour dates on there. And I know that he was saying to me last week that he's doing. In fact, go there because I don't want to announce it and it's not been made official. But there's something special coming up in January, mid to late January. But go to carltonleach.com. I really should look at the website. I hardly ever do. But you go to carltonleach.com. There's an event happening mid to late January. But Liverpool, do you know, I've got a few Scouse pals, lovely boys. They can't wait for me to get up there. Oh, Carlton's there, yeah, great. But you're definitely going to be there. Again, I'm very, very humbled by that because these are some good lads, some top flight lads, my Scouse pals. I mean, they gave me a load of crap about the win at Liverpool, or with Liverpool again last night, but it's all banter, it's all good. There was a team to watch in the 70s, Liverpool, best team in the league, untouchable. Love watching them. I'd say in the 70s, Liverpool was the most technically proficient team. Love, even for a West Ham boy. Love watching Liverpool play. Phenomenal. But last night was a good game. And that's probably one of the hardest things for me living in the States. is that I really can't watch the game live because you want to be there. It's like being outside, you know, at a sweet shop and you can smell and see everything going on and just being forced to look through the window. It's like being in Amsterdam, being told, right, there's all the pretty girls, but you can only look through the window. There's no, I really shouldn't say that with my wife, but no, but yeah, I understand the point. But watching the highlights.
What was the last game you actually went to?
Last game is when I was with one of the old Teddy Bunter firm, and I was home last year. It's silly money to go to a game of football now. It was 60 or 70 quid because I earn Mickey Mouse money. I'm on US dollars. Septic money's terrible against the pound. The pound's always been strong. So there's only one of my pals, one of the old Teddy Bunter firms, said, he took actually me and my little boy. He wanted to take my boy more than me. He goes, I'm going to take your son. You've been to the games. I'll take you your boy. But yeah, he took my son and I tagged along. And when I watched the game, that was, yeah, it was at this stadium and we lost. I can't remember who was playing with. That was, that was the beginning of this year. Beginning of this year I was on. And I was back, I've been back twice, but I just didn't get to go to the game because normally I'm there, you know, through the course of it. I arrive on the weekend, stay the week and I'm flying home the next weekend because again, you have commitments and, you know, you work a regular job. Well, I say a job I got, you just go in and hang out with some really cool people. I'm really lucky. I've got a really good boss. When I said I'm going to be away in December, his only request is make sure you bring me back some Cadbury's chocolate. So yeah, I've got it made. My boss is brilliant. Good bloke. He doesn't understand the whole football hooliganism thing, but yeah, he's a really good boss. And I just go in and hang out with him when I work, which is only 3 or 4 days a week at most. But he's a good boss. Looks after me.
Can't complain. You got the weather. You got a good boss. You got the sunshine and palm trees, man. So, in a non-biased way, what's your favorite chapter? What was your favorite chapter to write in the book?
I would say the Ultras chapter. I've never been to Italy, and I was very, very mindful of writing the Ultras chapter because Italian football supporters and Italian clubs and their fan base, it's very, very different than the UK. I mean, we grew up in the UK. We grew up with football. It's that old adage that, you know, we're born kicking a ball. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that, and I think everyone supported a team, even if they really weren't. I'd say so passionate into football as some. But with Italy, I was very mindful of writing a chapter because Italian supporters and their fan base, it's politics and religion are very, very much intertwined within who they are, and it's represented at football very, very clearly. I think to a certain degree, certainly in the 70s and 80s, it was very much left or right. But even to this day, there's still politics, certainly religion intertwined within that football fan base. And when you've got, let's say, with Lazio or with Inter Milan, they're basically cousins. You want that fan base to be complemented in what you're writing without grandising or embellishing or being biased. So to me, without being unbiased, I had to approach a few of the lads speaking with Carlton and people that are part of that mindset on how they are. And I came as close as I think you will without putting myself on a pedestal. But how I know I got it right is because they've been in contact with Carlton and said, get Jason over here. At first I was like, fuck, do I need to change anything? And they said, no, you've got it spot on. They're flying you over, which is one of the biggest compliments I could have wished or dreamt for. And they're lads, like I say, they're Italian football. See, the way that Ultras approach a game would never work in the UK with the drums and the chanting and at the front. It's like, kind of like Bill Gardner in some respects, where you'd be at the front, you've got their top boys at the front. But again, when you've got a 10,000 fan base, I mean, I'm talking hardened, passionate. They will literally walk over a broken glass for their team. Their support base. One of the best examples, and you can actually see this when you go onto YouTube and you put in Lazio for Fabrizio. He's dead now, unfortunately. He got killed. But you see how Lazio, where they were so upset one year with their team, they took some serious numbers and they went to the training ground of their team and they went to the management and the trainer and said, right, you fix this or we've got a problem. And they sent out the club management to have a talk with Lazio's top members. That's the level of dedication they got. It's not about taking a loss, it's about doing things properly. A loss is a loss. Like being a West Ham supporter, You identify it with a loss, but you celebrate a win. There's your ultras right there. And being that they are so, I'd say again, passionately involved is the only phrase I can come up with at short notice. But you've got to do them credit. You've got to do it justice. It's not about them being hooligans or not being hooligans or rowing people or not rowing people, or the way they it's said that they carry on. It's about telling it in a truthful way. They have no problem being brandished this or that. They'll have a problem about you lying about them. And like I say, when I got that call from Carlton saying, yeah, they're flying you over, I was really, truly humbled. I mean, that to me was one chapter I was very, very mindful of, not through fear or repercussion, just doing it for the right reasons. And there's nothing worse than having 10,000 fans that want to kill you. But again, just from a writer's perspective, not an author, because I don't consider myself an author, but just doing it from a writer's perspective is important to get it right. And they were quite happy with it. And again, I took that as a massive, massive compliment.
Yeah, that's kind of where it's due, man. So, what would you say was the hardest chapter for you to write in a book?
I'd say overall the whole book, because one of the hardest things to do when you're representing someone, or if you're writing about someone or writing with someone, is trying to understand their voice. And essentially, that's what you're doing. Is you've got to maintain that established platform. And that's where I was very, again, I guess you could say, mindful of writing Carlton's book, is because my voice and his voice may be the same in some respects, but I'm not a heavy duty villain. I'm not a top flight hooligan. Never was, never claimed to be. But you've got to relate or identify with that message throughout the book. And one concept that I had, because someone suggested to me that's good at what they do, they said that basically the whole book has to flow. And I said, I totally disagree. But anything, each chapter has got to be its own book. It's got to clash because it's a separate part of Carlton's life. It shouldn't have to flow. We're not writing Milnes of Boone. We're not writing, poetry's got to go from one phrase or line to the next. It's separate chapters of his life. So saying that there was one chapter that was harder than the other, or I think were a test, because it's writing it the way that Carlton wants it said. And that can be very, very difficult, because again, when I've written in the past, there are certain people that I've written for, and I've ghostwritten for a number of people. It's carrying that message, because you can't talk about certain incidents, so names have to be changed or places have to be changed, and then you're borderline making things up. You're touching into fiction. But if it's written in its context in the right way and from a truthful place, it doesn't matter about the name of the place, because if you read things correctly, that's why I enjoy reading scripts, because you can build up as much the ambience of the set or the place as you can read between the lines and get that actual story. So that to me was one of the hardest things, was just getting that message across without basically incriminating some people, because there's people that are around where there's a certain incident, and I won't give the chapter away, but there's a certain incident that's actually based on two people. But if you gave those two references, it'd give it away, and those people would be not happy that I've been written about them, and so be it. That again, you can't go down that route. But yeah, if you look at certain chapters, I wouldn't say that there was one that was any more difficult than the other. The whole book was difficult in the sense, I'm not, a classically trained writer, and certainly it was an undertaking that was a huge commitment for 5-6 months of my life, being that I'm not of that ilk, but you've got to carry that message, and you have to do it in a way that's going to, again, do Carlton credit. And he was more than happy with the book. And, each time I speak to him throughout the course of the week, we're often on the phone. I'm sure he saw this morning because of being celebrating last night. Because again, the man runs a million miles an hour. I'm sure he was celebrating last night. I haven't heard from him yet, so I know that he's suffering this morning because of the win over Liverpool. But I'd say that basically representing someone and carrying their message is one thing, but capturing their voice and putting that specific message out is something completely different than that. If you used to say the hardest chapter, I'd say it was the hardest book. I mean, I've been asked to do several other books now. I'll have to give it some thought, because again, it's a huge commitment, and you've got to write things for the right reasons and in the correct context. You write something, you've made it up, you're just a fucking shitbag, is all you really are. And if you carry on that story, you're just doing yourself a discredit. Some people have got no shame, but again, the lads that I know across the country, a lot of them wouldn't want it written, because they feel then it's going against who they are, by they're embellishing things, or things are done for a reason. Like, again, if you use a criminal element, you can't talk about certain things, and if you're going to talk about it, you might as well do it right. But it can't be written about because it would incriminate them and get them in trouble. So yeah, there's a lot out there, but it's capturing the right story for the right reasons. I mean, there's one guy, I can't give his name, he's an East London villain. He's borderline retired. You never really truly retire in some elements of crime, but he's about to retire. He said, if you write my book, it's yours. Give a certain percentage to charity, happily, but it's not published until I've gone. And that's kind of a sad way to look at it, because then you're like, well, I've got this phenomenal story. He's one of your mates, but you can only write it, you can only release it when he's gone. But I'd like it to be released now because it complements who he is. Because he's high ranking and he's one dangerous fucking guy, but it can't be released until he's gone. And that, I think, would be real shame. But again, those are the rules.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, from the conversations me and you have had, I think, Carl made a great choice with having you write this book, in a sense of you still live by the same code and you still have that same voice, but there's none of that, egotistical or binary side that others might, not want to give him credit for, whereas you want to give things as much authenticity and as much credit as possible. And I think it's very hard to find somebody like that, especially in that life. And I see with yourself that although you may not be a villain, you still live by the same code, you still live by the same morals, and you no doubt have a very, very similar voice.
Here's a good example. I've got a really good mate, Mickey Goldtooth, old East London face. I say old. We're going to say he's a little bit older than me, but the man would do anything for me. Again, as much as I would for him, I would lay down the road and stop traffic for him. Again, he treats you like a younger brother. He tells people the opposite around. He calls me the younger brother. But again, the man's just golden. But as he said, one of the best terms I've heard is you can't be wrong if you're strong. So if you're doing things for the right reason, if you're doing things by following the rules, the code, which sounds cliche, but it exists, it's there for a reason. Mickey will introduce you to people that he's known for 40 or 50 years that are heavy duty. None of those conversations would never leave that room. They would never be written anywhere, and it would be used as a form of education. Mickey, again, Mickey Goldtooth is a testament to old school. As much as say, best reference I got, and I'm hoping one of my mates, Glaswegian, is called Brian Anderson. The man's beyond humble, he's beyond talented when it comes to photography. How this guy has not smashed it doesn't make sense. The guy's phenomenal at what he does, and he's getting into doing documentaries, and I'm hoping he does something up north, as they say. But I'd say one of the best documentaries I've ever seen on the code, villainy, East Londoners, in terms of, again, that message, is a documentary. I'm so surprised that so many people have never heard of it. And it's called The End, Confessions of a Cockney Gangster. And you're already shaking your head like you've not seen it. And this blows my mind. If anyone's looking for reference on East London villains, not people that have migrated down there, shook someone's hand and stood next to someone who's had their photo, fuck off. I'm talking heavy duty people that are a real testament to A, East Londoners, and B, that follow the rules. It's called The End, Confessions of a Cockney Gangster. It's on, there's a trailer for it on YouTube, but I know you can get it on the DVD on Amazon or eBay. Phenomenal. That is the best done to date. And that is as close as you're going to get. Actually, it's spot on. Because I still am very close friends with Roy Shaw's youngsters, these two kids, Tina Shaw and Gary Shaw. Good people. I know they like it. So that says again, because Roy Shaw was in it. Danny Woolard, I was a really good friend with. Danny's in it. He was very pleased with it. Mickey Goldtooth's in it. He's pleased with it. Les Falco, he's again old school to the bone. I've spoken to him a number of times. He liked it. It was actually done by his daughters, Tina and Nikki. Phenomenal job, absolutely phenomenal. And it's not about grandising or it's not about grandising or embellishing things. It just tells you their message. You either agree or disagree, and that's nice that it can be interpreted that way. Yeah, it's just giving their story. Vicky Dark's in there. I've spoken to Vicky on a number of times. Again, old school. He's staunch in East London, proper face, Vicky Dark. Spoken to him a good number of times. He's a good bloke, really good. He's in there. Meaty Ganella, there's a good few people that, you know, in that documentary that I know on a personal level as well. That's, if anyone's watching anything on anything, use that as a benchmark. And I say, I'm hoping Brian Anderson can do something with, we've got mutual powers up in Glasgow, like Paul Ferris is a really good mate. Some of the Rangers lads, I know some high-ranking Celtic boys that are faces as well. I'm hoping that he can do something with those lads up there, because Brian's very, very talented. Again, how Brian's not cracked it yet, I don't know. I know it's a closed shop with the film and documentary and, you know, the industry as it is by and large, but Brian Anderson deserves he deserves his own platform. That man's phenomenal. I'm hoping he does a documentary on some of the northern lads, because he's very, very good at what he does. And there's a lot of lads up north that I get on very, very well with that would be fantastic. I'm not talking about your what was that fella in the 90s that was doing stuff? Donald McIntyre. Not talking about his efforts or any of the others that these ones that do these documentaries, but something done from working class people, proper people, like Leslie's daughters. They top flight, top draw what they done. But again, with Carlton and a few other lads, all I can say is watch this space. Like I said, for Brian Anderson, there's a guy that definitely deserves a mention. Google the man. I mean, he was mainstream press. He was a chief photographer for News of the World and some of the others for 10 years. I mean, that man's been around everyone from the Rolling Stones, Muhammad Ali, Amy Winehouse. I mean, he's everyone, not just villains. He's been around. I mean, he's been around the block. He invented the block to go around. The man's phenomenal. Brian Anderson, yeah, he does a lot of really, really good work. He's into documentaries. I'm hoping he gets it. He deserves that more than anyone I know. Really good. But again, saying about that with actors, there's a lot of good lads coming through. And there was an old interview that someone sent me. I was watching with Michael Caine not too long ago. How basically he opened a lot, you know, doors to a lot of working class. But there's actors coming through that are still. I can just feel it, just on the edge of it. Leo Gregory's good, mate. He deserves it. One of my mates, Ryan Sims. In fact, if I can do a little plug, if you go on my YouTube, Jason Allday, and there's one of my mates, really good mate, Ryan Sims. His old man was heavy duty. I mean, unless you were in those circles, I mean, heavy duty East London villain, his dad. Just go on my YouTube and look for Prairie Flags. When he said he was doing this one-man, you know, stage show in the East End called Prairie Flower, I'm like, Ryan, what have you done? You want to be an actor, you're doing this? And he said, no, watch it. He said, you're going to apologise after. And every time I speak with him, I've apologised since. Look at that YouTube on there. It's a one-man stage show, and he reenacts his dad, Danny O'Halloran. He was known as... Yeah. The man, why Ryan hasn't smashed it yet. Phenomenal actor. That man knows his stuff. From a working class background and raised around heavy duty people. I mean, I'm talking connected heavy people. Ryan's got that voice. So you've got Leo Gregory. You've got Ryan Sims. You've got other actors. Rick Yarney should be doing a lot better than he really is. Ricky's a good actor. He was, of course, leading Rise of the Foot Soldier. There's a good few lads that should come through. Neil Maskell, another guy I often speak of. He should be, I know he's getting into directing, someone told me just recently, but another really good actor. And he was the Danny Dyer's sidekick in Football Factory. Neil's a really good actor. Why he's not been up on stage a lot more, in front of the camera a lot more, I've never understood. But there's some really, really good actors out there. Really good work. I mean, a proper voice of the working class. They deserve a much bigger platform than they've already got. But that's where all this is important with the podcasts and the people being able to self-publish now and their own websites. And that's where it comes from. Because these Mickey Mouse efforts that exist, people that are never there and then writing stories, yeah, they can just, as the old saying go, just jog on. They're boring now. But yeah, give these boys, not me, I'm a no one. I'm quite happy being on the bottom of the totem pole, but there's some good working class voices out there. Like my mate Joe England, phenomenal actor. Phenomenal writer. Joe England, really, really good writer. Why that guy's not mainstream yet, I don't know. But we're getting some really good support with, like, you know, you look at Martin Knight, Irving Welsh, a few of the other lads. John King always supports a lot of the lads. There's the guys that are always deserve the credit. And like people, you know, I get quite a few emails and texts from pals and complimenting me and congratulating me. The compliments should be going up. So your Mickey Goldtooths, your Steve Guys, your Danny Woolard, rest in peace, your Richie Reynolds, your Carlton Leach, Carlton's manager. these people that deserve the credit and the gratitude and the thanks, not me. I'm bottom of the totem pole. I'm quite happy being there. I'm a no one. I'm on the tail end of all their hard work, is what it really is. But yeah, there's some good people out there that deserve that mention.
What I really enjoy about what you just mentioned about with these podcasts and with people's independent channels is that, finally we get to have these conversations and they get to be broadcasted to a wider audience, and not have to rely on publications that, are biased towards one thing or another, because, we're just having a one-to-one conversation and we're just sharing our beliefs. Fair enough, today it's to do with a book that you've written alongside one of your long reigning best friends, and it's a lot of people lack the ability nowadays to even have a conversation like this. So I guess in a way it not only lets us get our messaging and put across, whilst allowing other people to listen in who have a genuine interest. It also, it gets us to ask each of the questions that aren't answered elsewhere. Like, for instance, when we were on the phone the other day, I wanted to ask you, just about some of the since we're on the topic of the book, and personally, I do think there should be something movie made about this book. But we'll get to that. But while we're on the subject of your friendship with Carlton, I mean, obviously, over the decades, what are some of the most fun times that you can think of? Some crazy shenanigans that are mentionable.
Well, I can't give away too much. I said there's some things in the pipeline that, because I was speaking with these managers this morning, as I do pretty much every morning, just because some of the antics that went on, it's actually formulated another idea, and that we're going to try and materialise during the book tour, and that will be a really, really good giggle. But I'd have to say what I enjoyed most about being around Carlton was just seeing how humble he really truly is. He doesn't grandise, he doesn't embellish. He talks about things in a way that you understand and relate and identify with, which again is a compliment to him. But I mean, there might be a time where we'd be in a place having some pie and mash, and I went up to the counter and I said, my mate's going to be coming up. He's going to be ordering some more. I said, but you've got to speak really slowly and you've got to speak very, very loudly because he's hard of hearing, which is not true. But Carlton went up to the counter and ordered some. This poor lady was saying it so loudly and so slowly. Carlton weren't going to be rude and say, the fuck are you doing? He sort of stood there so patiently looking at her, waiting for her to finish, and then he repeated it normally. Okay, I just want another two. And so he'd come back and sit down again and say, the strangest thing just happened. And I'd start laughing. He'd go, you're such a prick. But I couldn't stop laughing. But the danger of that is Carlton will outweigh anyone and outpace anyone when it comes to a sense of humour. And I know for a fact when I'm home in a few weeks, I'm going to get outweighed and outpaced on that joke. I mean, there was a good few times I played similar things on a low level, sort of attempt. I'm surprised he didn't catch me out on that one to begin with, because he looks before he leaps on everything. He knows what situation he's walking into. He's not a silly man. But I know for a fact when I come back, I'm going to pay the price on that one. But yeah, we'll see. But no, there's been a lot of times. But I said there's probably at least 3 or 4 occasions that I'm reminded of the silly little attempts at, setting him up. Didn't really go through as much as I'd planned. But as he said just recently, he goes, "Don't forget you're back in a few weeks." And I know I'm fucked. I know he's gonna outweigh me on those jokes. I know he will. But again, it's like I say, you said that he's my best friend. I don't think Carlton really has best friends. I think he has people that he considers family, which again is a testament to how trusting he is and how welcome he is to people that have been around him for a good considerable amount of time. And he has genuine friends. I mean, it's like, I'd say the easiest way that I could put that into context would be like, I've got football mates and I've got friends I grew up with. It's not that one competes with the other. One of the mates that you grew up with, and there's another ones that you invest in for different reasons. And Carlton looks at people in different ways. It's not that he treats anyone better or worse. But when we were writing, I say, look, if you're comfortable writing this, Jace, I say, no, sorry, I'd say, if you're comfortable with me writing this, Cole, I'll write it this way. He said, Jace, your family, you write it the way that you think. I said, well, I don't want to do it. He said, no, you've got it down. And it sounds again a bit sort of like, I guess you could say like a bromance, but when Carlton says, Jay, you're like family, you realise and identify and you truly appreciate the level of trust and appreciation he has for what you're doing, and he knows that you've got his best interests at heart. Again, it's right on that same level as when Irving Welsh said to me 12, 15 years ago, you give me a reason to turn the page. That compliment, those words resonate to this day. I've got the hairs on my arms sticking up just thinking about what Irving said to me. There's some conversations I say that I will take to the grave, whether it be Irving Welsh, Martin Knight, again, Mickey Goldtooth, some proper people. They had conversations with me that they get me, even on days where I might be frustrated. I think of those words, all the clouds part and all I see is sunshine. And that's the value and the friendship, the relationship I have with these people. I can never do enough to thank them or consider them more than family or friends. There's something special about them. But that takes time. I've been mates with Carlton, really good mates with Carlton, I'd say, more closer to Carlton over the last 12 plus years, close to 15 years. Again, a testament to Irv. I'll call him and I'll nag him like mad. And how he puts up with me sometimes, I don't know, but I'll call him. And there's a lot of noise in the background. And are you in a canteen? Are you in a cafe or somewhere? He said, oh, no, I'm on a film set. I was like, I'll call you back. I'm like, fuck, this is how he earns his bread and butter. Oh, there you go, they can wait. That's Irv. I don't know him as Irving Welsh, I know him as Irv. When I go down and see him, he makes sure I get down to Miami, or I get up to Chicago, or I get out to LA, or I get back to London, or I get up to Glasgow, or Edinburgh, or Milton Keynes, wherever he is. He makes sure I get there all right. That's Irv. Like with Carlton, it's not Carlton Leach, it's Cole. There's certain elements of their lives that they always involve you in, and I take that as a massive, massive compliment. But the same said, mates I grew up with, the ones that are still alive, or the ones that aren't doing serious bird, those mates that I've got from growing up with, of the same value important as Irving Welsh, as Carlton Leach, as Mickey Goldtooth, as Martin Knight, as, again, East London pals that I've got that I didn't grow up with again, because I was born in West London. I migrate over as often as I can to be with pals that are East London or football East London. Those people are of the same value. And I think the most important thing that I remember, try to employ in most things that I approach, and it's something that was told to me a long time ago. So I've got a big fat squirrel running past the window on a palm tree. One of the most important things I remember, and I was taught this a long time ago, these aren't my words, was that a man will be tested or looked back on how well he walked through the fire. And that can be interpreted on so many levels in so many different ways. And I always try to remember that if I'm faced with something, whether it be writing or a situation or a phone call or an email, it's like how well I'm going to be looked upon a reference. I've got to use this as a reference. As long as I go through it with the same MO, you're fine.
Yeah, that's it. I find that just having that authenticity and just being correct in what you do gets you very, very far in life. And I think it's a trait that a lot of people often overlook, and it's a trait that I see in yourself in the conversations that we've had, and also in Carlton Leach as a human being, from the very brief conversations I've had with him, in recent weeks. And in the book, I know there's the chapter about Ibiza, and I don't want to give too much away. I don't want you to give too much away about the book itself. But can you touch up on some of those fun times from way back when?
Ibiza is one of those ones where it can never be really truly, I'd say, written about. It's kind of like, it's like when you're drunk. It's a giggle and a laugh because you're on a different plane, psychologically, physically, mentally, the experience, the mindset, what you're up to and where you are and what you're doing. So it's one that I'd say that Ibiza is a personal one for Carlton to read back upon, because it helps reflect the memories that he has from being there. If you were to write it I would say, word for word experience, you're going to incriminate a lot of people, including yourself. But it's written, I'd say, almost like in a third person's perspective, because you're in a different mindset when you're there. Ibiza is a place that surprisingly doesn't appeal to a lot more people than it does, because the mindset is you go there just to drop gear and just be out of your nut. But I know people that go there and they've never drinking a drop of alcohol in their lives, and they go there and they'll have a better high than that soppy 18-year-old who's just dropped 3 pills, and they're on a much better, much natural high and a much longer lasting high. Just that mindset that some people automatically adopt the second that plane touches down, like a kid running into Disney World. They're just overwhelmed, and they see colours and smells and variations of life. That's Ibiza for those that really can tune in. Carlton's one person when he's there. You observe him when he's in Ibiza. It's Carlton Leach as a 21-year-old. And it's a lot of fun to be around. You feed off that energy, I promise you, better than anything else. It's a different language. It's almost like you're a passenger in one car. You get into another vehicle, and Carlton Leach he's both the passenger, he's the driver, he's the narrator, and he's the tour guide of that experience. It can't be written about. It can only be experienced. All these people that are obsessed with going to a club or anything going on, the first thing they do is they bang out an iPhone and they've got, put it down and just value that experience. You don't have to remember everything, but experiencing contributes to who you are as a person. It sounds very sort of like very, I guess it's meant to. It's not. Ibiza's not meant to be a materialistic place. You go there to tune in and chill out and disconnect from fucking iPhones and iPads and shit. You go to Ibiza to experience, drink, breathe, adopt, embrace Ibiza. It sounds cliche, but if you think it's cliche, fuck you. You've never experienced. Go to Ibiza without all of the nonsense of the daytime parties. There's people that do that and have a great time. Crack on, good for you. Go there for the real Ibiza. And if you can tune in and you can find that real Ibiza, your Carlton Leach is a 21-year-old. I promise you, untouchable. I've lived in Southeast Asia for a number of years. I've been all over Europe. I've been in different parts of the world. I never had a camera, and I still remember those experiences to this day. I can still smell it, experience it, flavour it. You can read about being in a Sistine Chapel, get an idea. Till you're there and you can smell and feel the ambience and the actual experience of it, you've not been. Read as many books as you want on it. You're not even touching it. You can read. You can have someone recite the dates and places and names of historical events. Until you've been there, just wind your neck in. That's Ibiza for Carlton. There's very few photos of Carlton and Ibiza for a reason. It's not about he's going to incriminate himself. It's not meant to be 10,000 photos of you popping in the toilets and doing selfies in front of a mirror or your fucking latest outfit. Go there, chill in, chill out. That's Carlton and Ibiza. No photos, just on that wave. It's a different deal.
Yes, I can't wait to I can't wait to see from which aspect that was written. But I mean, I've been Ibiza. This will be my 19th time I'm going next year, and honestly, it's just good for the soul, man. I think it's fucking necessary to go at least once every 2 years. It's just good for the brain and good for the sanity, man. So what? So I know you can't speak about what's pending, with the book signing tour, but what else can we expect from you and Carlton? Then
I know that he's got. I say the book tour is going to dictate at least one, if not three things about what's going to be coming next. I know he's got this. He's got something that's planned mid to late January. I'm sure it's the last week or within the last 2 weeks, towards the end of the month of January. That's going to be really good. Go to his website. As soon as it's up there, you'll see it. The book signing is something that's important for him because he wants to get out. He again, Carlton amongst any crowd. He's very, very approachable. Very humble guy is Carlton. I'll say when we announced he was going to Cardiff, it sold out within a week. He's got a massive fan base there. Well, not a fan base. He's just got a lot of really good friends there. They're turning up to see him. They're supporting him, which is nice. And he's promising, I'm going to give you tickets for that. No, we're paid because we're supporting what you're doing. That again is a testament to who Carlton is and how he's liked by a lot of the Cardiff lads. A few Swansea lads as well. Good lads. Liverpool is very unique in that, again, I've got a pretty good, rhetoric, or I'd say more of a good relationship with the owner of Transalpino. Very iconic store. And I like talking to the owner, Brendan, because of course, it's always that debate about the whole football casual culture, where it started, this and that. But the one thing I like about, Brendan, the owner again of Transalpino, he puts his money where his mouth is. He says that he's a true fan of, like, trainers or sneakers, whatever you want to call them. But there's a man that fly around the world to get one pair of trainers. The man's he's the guru, he's the god of trainers. So I'll always give testament that the true kings of trainer culture will be my Scouse pals, no more than Brendan with Transalpino. But I get on really well with Neil, who runs 80s Casuals Classics. I mean, both are very, very good at what they do. And what I think is, again, a true testament to how good, there's no conflict between them. They both operate in that world of, the casual culture, the trainer culture, and they're both doing their own thing. There's no conflict, which I think is, again, a testament to, A, they're adults, and B, it complements the culture as a whole. There's no at each other. With some people, there might be a competing author. He's got to attack what you do. Fuck off. Again, you should complement each other in these things. And I think that is, again, a massive compliment to Brendan at Transalpino up in Liverpool and Neil at 80s Casuals Classics. Both good lads, and I'll get on well with both. They're both really, really good lads. But again, in answer to your question, I'd say when we're up in Liverpool, it's going to be a completely different crowd turning up, because it's basically like, because the shows are shows. It's the Q&A. It's going to be a lot going on at each of the shows. Go to carltonleach.com. It gives all the details about the shows. But Liverpool's, we're going to be meeting up with a good few people up there. I've got a couple of pals I'm meeting up with, a group called the Banshees, a couple of Scouse lads, very, very good group. Again, another one, why they've not smashed it, I don't get it. But they're going to be turning up to see us as well. That would be good. So we're getting support for the right reasons. But Liverpool's going to be sort of a different approach to what he's doing, because it's going to be turning up. You can get the Carlton books there. You can see the king of trainers. Neil might well like that, but again, Neil does a cracking job anyway. But go and see the king of the most iconic trainer shop, which by and large is Transalpino. But there's going to be a lot of really, really good lads turning up at Liverpool. Like I said, I've got a lot of pals turning up as well. A couple of heavy duty lads turning up. I'll be looking forward to seeing again. I ain't seen them in a number of years, but it's nice when they make the effort to come out and support what you're doing. Again, it says who you are.
Yeah, it honestly does. And I mean, I'm just surprised that there hasn't been any more dates added, to be honest. With the
if I told you what's coming up, it'll ruin the book tour. So watch the book tour, because there's things happening on the book tour that complements the book tour that leads on to the next step. So carltonleach.com. Go to carltonleach.com, and like I say, he's on social media, but go to carltonleach.com, because that's always his first step for updating what he's doing. So any information I always get sent from the guys in Carlton doing the carltonleach.com. I get that sent to me, and I just repeat what's going on. But there's things happening on the book tour. It could be one of three things. If I tell you all three things and only two materialise, people, well, what happened to this other one? Well, it was a maybe. But no, you said, that's what I'm saying. Depending on, the book tour is going in one direction. It's for the book, it's to promote the book. It's people come out and say that he's got a lot of supporters, and people have supported him over the years, long before me, that are coming out to support him and see him. He's got a lot of really good people around him. But the energy that goes into that book tour is how that's received, sends it into one, two, or three things that are going to materialise out of the book tour. It's going to be definitely one out of the three. That's all I can say. I know it doesn't give you much to go upon, but carltonleach.com, the book tour, there's going to be updates constantly during the tour and on social media during the tour. There's a couple of really funny things that are going to be happening as well. But again, just watch social media, and because I'm a bit of a caveman when it comes to these things, social media. Normally, my wife does a lot of the social media. She said, "Oh, this person asked you a question." I don't do much of it, I'll be honest.
I mean, me and you tweet back and forth, and I think we were tweeting something, retweeting something that Paul Ferris had actually posted, and that's when I followed you on there, because. And I noticed you don't do much tweeting. You just kind of chime in like a half an hour to an hour a day, but you don't consecutively post. But
no, but see, the thing is, with the family, I mean, I'm an assistant coach at my son's football team, so there's several days a week right there. I work again, I've got a really good boss. I turn up when I want. He's a really good boss. So I'm there a few days a week, and then, you know, with home life and staying in contact with pals and the time difference, you know, I'll sometimes go on in the morning, or my wife will send out a few tweets. Like when you sent me messages, that's normally via a different method of social media, so we stay in contact that way. But I'm not. I always value a conversation. I will value a handshake. I will value a please and a thank you, and in person. As much as social media can be a really powerful ally and tool, there's a lot of, I'd say, people that use it to hide behind. There's very little accountability for cowards that want to hide behind social media as a platform. I pay no mind to them. I completely ignore it. I say a lot of the time I don't do my own tweets. I don't social medias. It's even my wife or actually someone else, and they laugh about it. And I say, oh, guess what? And I'm like, not interested, don't care. They're not of my ilk. But like, your messages always come direct to me. But yeah, it's social media is one of those things that I'm not a massive fan of, because it's become, let's say, one social media platform where it used to be for social engagement, and now it's become a medium for that social platform to decide what's right or wrong. I'm not talking about, you know, being spiteful or being racist or being just complete fucking dick. It's where now they decide what's fact and what's fiction. Well, they're not fact checkers. That social media platform, a social media platform is meant for people to be engaging in, and where you get your profit or your revenue from is from the clickers and all that. That's as far as it should really go. But I don't think there should be any involvement from, say, one social media platform because they feel that what you said is not going with their narrative, or what doesn't fit, you know, a certain rhetoric, or what doesn't basically hurt someone's feelings. If I don't like it, I don't read it. I stop reading it after the first line. I move on. I don't want these ones that reads it and it gets infuriated. I mean, there's one guy, and I can't give his name, but I've been in contact with him quite a while, and we were speaking just recently, where he'll actually write something on a social media platform, and then you get like 20 messages of hate, and he's like, yeah, but it wasn't directed at you, it was generalizing. And this guy's very, very successful at what he does. Very clever man. But some of his humor I don't like, but some of it I do. Not for a million years, but I say, you can't say that, because then I would be a hypocrite, because I believe in freedom of speech. So I believe in, you know, a capitalist society, not crony capitalism, but I believe in capitalism. I believe in things, you know, going through effort and contribution and by your own means, more than any level of government involvement or subsidizing. But, you know, again, there's got to be a level of freedom in what's said, so that a basis of an opinion that encourages even more speech can, otherwise you just become nothing more than a Marxist, you know, government mandated, you know, voice box or speech box. Like, there was one guy I was speaking with that works, he's one of the anchors for a major New York network, and his rhetoric is one that he promotes a certain type of speech, and I'm like, how could you say, yeah, but I'm not really, if you think about it, I'm not really a news person, I'm an actor. And that made complete sense. And the UK news has gone, yeah, and again, I can't give his name, and people might say, oh, you're making it up. I don't really care, because again, these people that I speak with are highly educated people, very successful people. I always lean towards success. I don't have any level of disdained opinion or any, you know, bitterment, bad attitude, or level of resentment towards people that have gained success through hard work, whether we left or right. But as he said, don't consider us newsreaders, consider us actors. And that I think encapsulates you guys. I mean, again, when I was volunteering at the BBC, and I was working at the BBC from 87 through 92, 93, whatever it was, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting Sir Trevor MacDonald, an educated man, very humble man, you know, Angela Rittman, a very, very classy lady. These people were very good at what they did. But there's a difference of how they were being, you know, approaching things from a journalistic level then to what's said today. I mean, there's people now that are write things and say, you can't question that, you're wrong because you said, well, that should be open to debate, surely. Now what's being said, you see it with US networks, you see it with British networks, across the board. I mean, it said, I said I was reading an article by Al Jazeera, and then I was reading an article by RT. I said, oh, RT is just Russian and Al Jazeera is very left. Well, no, I actually like certain things written in certain things. If you're only going to be able to read one certain thing, well, that's Marxist, that's communism. I don't believe in that mandate. But then, I mean, the right has become very much that way as well, where you've got to do it this way, or you're anti this, or you're that. One's either one going one way or one's going another. There's no medium anymore, and I think that's the danger of it.
Mediation in conversation, because it's like, we're living in an era now where it's like, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong, and if you agree with me on one thing, you have to agree with me on everything. There's lots of people that I agree with on one thing, but I completely disagree with something else. And people don't realize that it's okay to be like that. You don't have to completely be on one side and completely be on the other. Like, you can take stuff from both sides that's right to your life that you agree with, and not hate somebody for having different beliefs to yourself.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the positives I've got. I mean, where I live in Central Florida, there's a lot of retirees around me, and they're some of the nicest people because they're from, by and large, from either New York or the Midwest, and they're a real testament to some of the old school Americans, and they're such lovely people, very very humble. And you'll get like, there's an old boy across the street from me. I cut his grass and I skim his pool for him because more often than not I've got time to do it. But he's a real hard. Basically, he sits on one side of the aisle so strongly, but for 1 second would he be spiteful or rude or insulting in a way that, how could you vote for that guy? And well, because I like some of what he said, but I didn't agree with all what he said. But I align and identify more with that on a general consensus than I do with that. He said, I can see that. I can see that. Now you try having that conversation with someone 30 years younger, you'll get into a physical fight because like, you're wrong or you're racist or you're this or you're that. And I'm like, that doesn't really signify or identify who I am. It's funny because there was a conversation I was explaining with my daughter because she's in college and she's studying political science. And we was talking about the difference between like, the Reaganite era, the 80s, etc., right now through to today. I said the large part of it is everything has become so politicized now. It's either deemed that you're right or you're wrong. It was a case back in the day where you just had a different opinion. But the one thing I was explaining to my daughter is that with politics, with my grandfathers, one of my grandfathers was Labour and one was Conservative. But there was never any clash. There was no conflict between them. They just had different ideals or saw things differently is all it really was. But both grandfathers had this philosophy that your conversation in politics was strictly reserved between you and the ballot booth. No one else. It didn't matter because it was on the same level, on the same par of that level of intimacy, on par with, say, something so personal that it was like you was airing your wife's dirty knickers. You didn't take it out into the open. It was something that you, even in a pub, you might not know who your best mate you've been drinking with for 30 or 40 years, who you voted for, because it was something personal and private. Now it's used, politics is used as a weapon. It's just maddening. But anyway, we're not here to talk about politics. I'm of nationality and I'm a registered independent, which is true. I don't go left, I don't go right. I try to see what I think is best for, there's some people that view politics where there's got to be something they agree with. Well, I try to look at things and what's best for overall, the general consensus. But again, we're not here to talk politics, and there's people that just get real hard-lined about it. And it's more opinion than fact now when it comes to politics. But yeah, another conversation for another day.
Yeah, most certainly. And on that note, I'm running out of juice this end, and I don't mean conversation.
No, I've got a couple of big fat squirrels that keep running past my window, and I'm normally out throwing them some food this time. I'm sure I've conditioned them to be here that time of the day now.
I know I've tipped in on a little bit of your own time as well. But listen, Jace, I really appreciate your time. And when you land and you get your pair of jeans, I'll make sure to be seeing you in Liverpool, and we'll have a proper catch up and a pint then.
Yeah, so there's gonna be there's some proper pals I've got turning up. So maybe duty people are coming out to see both me and Carlton. So there'll be some good people floating around, definitely. So Liverpool absolutely. So it's a non-ticket event. So Liverpool will be a good event, different crowd, good crowd, some good lads up there.
No doubt, it's going to be brilliant. I actually tweeted to you guys about this. That's the one show I was genuinely interested in coming in more than the others. I love Liverpool as a city, and I love the people and the fact that Carlton and you are going to be there, signing and promoting the book, and we get to have a discussion in person, and we get to have a laugh. It'll be good. But for now, you enjoy the palm trees and the sunshine.
I'm going to go and feed the squirrels, and I'm going to walk my little dogs because I love walking them for a good hour each day in the sunshine. So without putting, adding sort of like, too much sunshine to your doom and gloom, it's I'm looking at the pool and I'm looking at the palm tree and these fat squirrels running around looking for food that I normally take out this time of day. But yeah, I'm going to go and do some of that right now.